back, spawn of death. Morte commands you to back off. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, more on deities and religion.
In RPGs.
Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about more deities and religion. Kind of a part two.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, there's a lot to talk about
there
here.
Is.
All the deities of all the games. And I want to just kind of hit out on one of my worlds. I've actually got 3 campaign worlds that I've actually got deities for each and every one of those campaign worlds.
One of the things I think that's really cool in your world in Adane is that, and we mentioned this just a little bit at the very tail end of the other episode, is that as you travel throughout the world, what may be the name of one god in one realm is a different name of the same god in a different realm. So you may worship this goddess up north, but in the Middle Lands, she's known as this name.
Yeah.
On the sea people, she's known as this, and those living in the deserts or the steppes see her as this name. And so you've worked out that whole sort of panoply of god names and setups throughout your world, and it's really extensive. And I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I kind of looked at it as, if you look at the Greek gods and the Roman gods, they were really basically the same gods, just different names.
Yeah. Yeah, and it happens with a lot of times that people will steal this kind of belief system from another culture to make it their own.
Well, the Germanic gods had Wotan.
Yeah.
And the Norse gods had Odin, and he's the same.
Essentially the same. I mean, changed slightly, but essentially the same kind of thing, And so, I remember reading about that in your setup. There were, down in the deserts, they worship this god, but this god is different, or this goddess is different, but it's the same goddess, but the name is different. And they call this, as you travel, you'll find temples, but you might recognize certain things inside the temple that looks familiar.
Yeah, if you went up to somebody and said, where's the temple of Morte? Morte, who's the god of basically death in my world.
Yeah.
Not evil, because death is a neutral thing.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
If you watched the previous episode, if you went up and spoke in your language and you called him the deity of your language, they'd probably look at you kind of funny, and you would probably say, the god of death and whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, Corrigan or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. You can be recognized by what what their characteristics are, what their uses are, and what their commands are. So as you go in different places, it's basically the same setup of the deity, just by different names.
Yeah. Now, we're going to kind of discuss some of my deities and some of the gods of Faerun, Forgotten Realms, and Golarion.
Golarion,
Pathfinder. Pathfinder.
Yep.
Paizo's deities. And there's, the extensive list in both of those are just huge. It's bigger than mine.
Yeah.
In many ways. And most of the time, they actually... The Golarion gods, while they're broken up into more than just one thing that they follow, it's like we talked about in the previous one, Odin wasn't just the god of war. He was the god of poetry and
knowledge
and
mead
and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And which is how I broke it up in my world. Whereas in even in the Forgotten Realms, the deities have multi-paths and even alignments. And I've even broken mine up into alignment. Now, in mine, people will consider Morte to be an evil deity, but technically he's not.
Yeah.
Because people don't like death. They see that as a bad thing.
Sure.
But Morte is not evil, and he's non-discriminatory.
So I'll just give everybody a couple examples. This is from Delaney's Realm of Adane.
Now, kind of a quick thing. When I named my deities, kind of a thing that I do is I'll use Google Translator.
Yeah.
and I'll come up with a concept, and I'll put in a name, and then I'll search by a language, and I'll think, oh, that sounds kind of cool. So that's how I came up with most of my deities' names, not all of my deities' names.
Yeah.
So Certes, who is lawful good in my realm.
Yeah, so Certes, lawful good, which is the god, it's a male god, justice, law, and community. And the holy symbol is a scale.
Right. Now Certes, when you see Certes, looks very androgynous.
Yeah.
If you were to see Certes. He's tall, he's slim, he's very androgynous, and he's usually wearing these flowing robes. Now Certes is from the old Parconian Empire. That's where he got his start. Now I actually have the backgrounds of each and every deity and how they came to be. In my world, there were two main deities. There was Brennan, who's the father.
Yep.
And then there's, basically we just call her the mother because the name is very complex. It's Kemen.
Yeah, so you have Brennan.
I can't even pronounce the name off the top of my head.
Kemenatara.
Kemenatara.
Or the mother.
The mother is basically how everyone refers to it.
And it's interesting how you have this. So you have, it is very common practice for people to worship more than one deity. And you have up here, Brennan is the overall ruler of all the deities. He holds power over the entire pantheon of deities. And then you have...
But yet, he really has no worshippers. People don't really follow him.
Yeah, because it's like an abstract concept. However, that's not the truth, though, with the mother. Kemenatara, goddess of forests, goddess to the elves of Tarashans.
Mainly the elves.
Yeah, goddess of life, creation, plants, and the planet itself. Mother to all the gods and all that lives.
Right, and I threw that in there kind of a Wiccan type belief, where you follow the mother, and the elves in my world don't really follow the god. They follow the mother. They, because the forests are part of that.
Yeah, yeah. So to them, they're more this kind of a naturalistic kind of nature worshiping person. They follow that person, that aspect of the mother and the father. Okay.
But for the most part, she's forgotten outside of the elves.
No, the elves are the only ones who pretty much, if I remember right, they're the only ones who pretty much follow her.
Yeah, the old druids used to.
Yeah.
The old druids.
Well, there's part of a backstory of what happened to them, and it's too long to talk about here, but the druids typically don't exist in the world anymore.
Not the truest druids.
Not the truest druids, yeah.
The druids of the rule books are there, but the true druids are not there anymore.
Yeah. So then we've had lawful good god, which would be Certes. So a neutral good god would be handler. A merchant, trade, commerce. And the sign would be a money bag.
Yeah.
So
now they've actually had run-ins with people who are followers of handler, who are merchants traveling, who usually, if they've done something for him or done something good, that merchant has given them a coin, which has the face of handler on it.
Yep.
And it grants kind of a luck.
It's kind of a luck bonus coin.
Yeah.
If you've helped a merchant out, a traveling merchant, if you helped them out, helped them get their stuff back, chase down some bandits or something like that, they give you a little bit of a kind of a luck bonus coin.
Yeah, a little luck bonus coin.
Yeah.
It's like a +1 to whatever once a day. So
yeah. So we have lawful good, Fenra, protection and the hunt.
Now Fenra was a deity that Tom created.
Yeah.
That's the one that he wanted to create.
I essentially created a whole backstory for Fenra, the wolf goddess. Mainly because I tend to see, people in our world see wolves as being evil. I don't see wolves as being evil. They're just predators like anything else. They're hunters. Yet they have a very complex pack sort of psychology that's led by a female. I wanted that to be a sort of a way of talking about how some people who live very close to the earth, forest dwellers, steppe dwellers, would look and see that they wouldn't see the wolves as being evil, but they would see them as being part of their world. And in a sense, it's the whole concept of raised by wolves. The wolves would adopt a child and raise a child.
Mowgli.
Yeah. So I kind of went off that when I created that whole thing, and I know it's worked out pretty good so far.
Yeah. Fenra takes shape. Their symbol is like a wolf.
Oh, howling wolf head.
Howling wolf, and clerics will typically have wolf head. Kind of like a Praetorian.
Yeah, they'd have a wolf head cloak.
That and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something that's been granted to them by Finra, the mother.
Yeah.
The wolf mother, or...
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So then we can move to neutral. So you have like, here's a good one. True neutral. Mola. Okay. Female goddess of spring, love, fertility, sowing. Not sowing like sowing, but sowing like sowing crops.
Right.
Sowing, and then wine. And the holy symbol for Mola would be grapes, like a cluster of grapes. And it's basically harvest.
Yeah, she's basically of summer.
Yeah, but see,
or no, she's of autumn.
Of spring.
Of
Mola spring. Yeah, so not harvest,
okay, yeah.
but actual growing things.
Right.
So you get to true neutral, which is care, okay, which is fall, autumn, harvest, plenty, beer, cider. And the sign then would be sickle and wheat. Now, care is also female.
Right.
So, you get like these growing and harvest goddesses that kind of come together, and they all kind of play off against each other. They're kind of true neutral because, in a sense, it's like, well, what are growing things? I mean, they're not evil.
Yeah, and it's the seasons.
Yeah, it's seasons. There's turning of seasons. There's growing plants. I mean, you might have poison ivy, and you might think poison ivy is evil, but poison ivy is just a plant. It's just growing.
Yeah. What is a weed? It's a plant out of place.
It's a plant out of place. So it's not necessarily evil. You may think it's evil. It's just growing there, So you have, let's see.
Well, Invernia, who's the goddess of winter.
Yeah.
In my world. And she's actually the daughter of Morte.
So here's a really good one. Chaotic neutral. Pettis.
Yes.
Thieves, fraud, swindling, traps, trickery, and pranks. And the holy symbol for that is a hand missing a finger.
Right.
So that is really cool. That's the thieves' god. It's male. I always thought that could be sort of androgynous.
Could be.
Yeah. It's chaotic neutral. So everybody likes playing chaotic neutral characters, or like kind of thieves or con men, or they're good sometimes, bad sometimes, kind of depending. They're in that gray area. They have their own deity. But it's all how these things kind of go together, which is really cool. Thieves, fraud, swindling, traps, trickery, and pranks. So they all kind of go together like that. It isn't just like, oh, God of the thieves. Well, what else is there? Well, there's all these things in there, which is really kind of cool. Okay, then we go down to like evil. So we have evil, gods. We have lawful evil, which is Rifle.
Yeah, Rifle, the goddess of war.
Which is basically a goddess.
Almost like she's in some respects she's based upon Morrigan, the goddess, the Celtic goddess of war.
Yeah. So Rifle is war and conflict. I mean, war is essentially a construct of humanity. Like humans, or dwarves or whatever, bipeds create war. And so they have a female goddess of war. You could look at that as being, war and conflict as being truly evil because it destroys everything that's good and everything that's growing in the world. So, but you consider that to be lawful evil, which is really interesting because a lot of people consider that to be chaotic evil.
Right. It's because Rifle is, she's not indiscriminately war. It's waging war, and there can be law behind war.
Well, sure.
And that's why I did it with Rifle.
I mean, there's revolutions against an oppressive government.
Right.
So.
And it's basically any kind of combat is what she is, but she doesn't necessarily mean that she's evil herself.
Yeah.
In fact, the cleric in our world that we were playing was, their main deity was Morte, but their second deity that they followed closely was Rifle.
Yeah.
Because they considered themselves to be a battle cleric, going into battle and helping out their army and their compatriots.
So you have here a chaotic evil deity, Grumph.
Grumph. Which
is the god of orcs, ogres, hobgoblins, and the holy symbol is a spiked club.
Yeah.
Now, explain in a Dane that those are essentially evil or chaotic neutral characters.
Yeah, so in a Dane, the orcs, goblins, and such are warped humanity is what they are. And the whole backstory, and it's a lengthy backstory, is when the world was created, Brennan and the mother had the planet, and they created giants. And they created this massive artifact called the Forge of Life.
Right.
And the Forge of Life created all the life on the planet. And the giants were the masters of it. You know, they controlled it. They used it. Well, the giants kind of got lazy, and they decided that, well, we're going to create a new race to do our smithing and our building for us. And they created the dwarves. And then the dwarves, they trained with supervision how to use the Forge of Life. And they decided they wanted the dwarves to create another race that would handle the animals in the forest and the food. And therefore the elves came about. Mm-hmm. And there for the longest time it was the elves and the dwarves. Now the dwarves are the elder race. Now there's kind of a tick for tack there. The dwarves will tell you that they created the elves, and will say, no, you didn't. Because the elves look at it as a bigger picture.
Oh, yeah.
That without the mother and the father,
yeah,
who created the giants, who created the dwarves, who then created the elves,
right.
In reality it was the mother and father. They look at it as a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And then the dwarves decided to start tinkering, and they created humans and halflings and gnomes, and then they decided they were going to try and make giants, and they screwed up big time when they were doing it, and that's how the orcs and goblins and trolls and everything else came into being. In my world, they're not necessarily evil creatures.
Right. So
because you guys have ran into
to
trolls and ogres that don't just, they're not just indiscriminately killing, they just want to survive.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because you have it listed as their deities, chaotic evil.
Right.
But yet we've encountered, some of these creatures, and we've been able to deal with, and they just have their own agenda. It's not like they're actually, I would consider them more to be chaotic.
They're very chaotic.
Rather than evil. Full-on evil. So. Yeah,
and I don't really play tight with the alignments with my deities.
Yeah.
Some of them I do.
Yeah.
Like, let's see here. Like, Fraseri, who's gluttony, overindulgence.
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of an evil thing, and people who are gluttonous, are kind of looked down upon. And kind of frowned upon in my world, especially in the kingdom of Isildur, where the king and the queen of Isildur live just slightly above the people.
Yeah, they're rather frugal.
Yeah, they don't dress fancy. Their castle's not this big, huge, Neuschwanstein castle.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. It's decorated nice, and they dress nice, but they don't flaunt their wealth. In fact, they give a lot of their wealth back to the people, so the people can live.
Yeah, so you go through like the chaotic evil. The one we've encountered, the one sort of deity that we encounter kind of on not a regular basis, but at least once or twice, is the chaotic evil Remus, the god. It's a male god of slaughter, murder, destruction, and that's the bloody eye. And so you see the symbol of the bloody eye scratched in temples to desecrate the temple, and we've come across that where temples have been desecrated with the scratch of the bloody eye.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, when that's happened, it's been the orcs who've done that, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes. It can be humans, too.
It could be humans who follow that. Okay, so slaughter, murder, destruction. Yeah, we've come across that. That's usually what Delaney uses as sort of like the characters of evil that they worship. Remus or Remus. Is it Remus or Remus? Remus. And the bloody eye. So you usually, if you see that symbol, you're running up against some pretty evil people.
Yeah, because they're just wantonly destroying and whatever.
Now, this is just a small list what we talked about. That's a big list, 2 pages. So you've created this really elaborate system which works really, really good. And most of us have like little sheets that we were trying trying to figure it out, that kind of thing.
And then let's take Imbralic. Imbralic is the messenger of the gods. And the party has actually, they don't typically run into deities in my world. The deities are kind of off on their own little thing. Brennan, who's the father, the creator, has dictated that they really shouldn't interfere with life down below. Directly.
Yeah.
They've indirectly done it, but they're not directly. They're not supposed to come up and say, "Hi, how are you? Here's this power." That's kind of changed a little bit in the campaign that they've been on, where they've actually ran into Invernia,
the goddess of winter.
Because of something that's going on.
Yeah, that's a plot hook.
Right.
So it typically would not happen, but it's plot hooked in to talk about this changing world and how the gods and the goddesses have their fingers in it, so to speak.
Now, somebody might see a pack of wolves or hear wolves howling, and they might say that Fenrir's calling, or there's Fenrir's children, and that's a symbol of Fenrir. But with Imbralic, they'll see like this shadow that will burst into all these ravens and crows. I don't look upon ravens and crows as evil in my world. They're messengers. And that's kind of an old world belief that crows and ravens are messengers, and that's what they see when they see all these ravens flying out. Is, somebody is messaging, or the messenger of the gods. And then there's let's see, where's one other one here? So there's Bremen and Brolic. Yeah, so those were the main ones. Now, whereas Brennan and the mother are the elder gods, the second elder god, or third elder god, if you want to look at it, is Morte, because death had to come about.
Yeah, and don't we talk about that, really? We talk about how because death is a part of life, that the triumvirate of gods and goddesses, that you have the mother, the father, and then you have death. Because death is, basically the transition from one to the other.
Right.
And because of, all the creations, even the giants, they're supposed to be immortal, yet our characters have killed giants. Even though the giants who are supposed to be immortal, they die also. So, Morte is really more of a transitional god of transition from one state to the next.
Yeah.
Nothing evil about that, really. I mean, of course, people don't want to die, but when your time's up, your time's up. And so that's when Morte comes for you.
Morte comes to you, and he carries you on to the next life.
Yeah.
Whether you are reborn, and maybe you might remember something. Usually you don't. But your whole goal in life is trying to do everything perfect. Now let's kind of look upon the gods of D&D.
Is that D&D or Forgotten Realms?
This one's D&D. So you have Bane, who's the god of tyranny.
Oh, yeah.
Cyric, who's the god of lies. Now, Cyric, I remember a time when Cyric did not exist in the Forgotten Realms. And there was a story, 3 characters, Kelemvor, there was, I can't remember, Midnight, I think her name was, and Cyric. And they were these 3 adventurers that were working together. And it was the time of the gods, and the gods came down back on Earth and had lost their power, and it was basically they had to live as powerful mortals, and if you could destroy one, you could take their place. And in the end, Cyric wins and becomes the god of lies or the god of death or whatever it was. But yet, Maestra, who was the goddess of magic, vanishes, and Midnight takes her place and is now the goddess Maestra, or however they pronounce it. Kelenvor became the god of death, and he's not necessarily evil. But it was kind of funny how that came about, how that story was all about, these 3 characters, and how they were trying to become, they were cohorts, but Cyric was bad, and he turned against them, and he ended up winning in the long run, but yet the others got godhood as well. Gon, god of craft and civilization. Helm, god of watchfulness. These are I'm just going to name a few. Lathlander, god of dawn and renewal. Loth, we all know Loth as the old god of spiders and the drow. Soon, goddess of love and beauty. And then, of course, those who are playing Baldur's Gate 3 will know the goddess Saloon, who's basically goddess of the moon, and Soon, who's the goddess of love and beauty. And there's diametrically opposed sisterhood, and Saloon is Ravenheart's deity, who's kind of, it's this whole deep darkness, and Soon is this nice deity, and so it's kind of interesting. And it's, the whole pantheon in Forgotten Realms is huge. This is just the major deities here that I listed off.
Okay, so now one of the things I can see that really is different from what you've created your gods is that basically they've simplified things
Yeah.
quite a bit. Okay, Amanaktur, god of the sun. God of growing things, God of weather, God of light. No, God of the sun.
Yep.
Nothing. There's no other secondary characteristics. Asmodeus, God of indulgence.
Asmodeus.
God of indulgence.
Basically, he's a demon or a devil. In all the old first edition, he was the head of the devils.
Okay.
He was the most powerful.
Okay, so down here then we have Shantia, goddess of agriculture. All right.
So aren't the sun and
agriculture,
growing,
harvest, growing. Surik, god of lies. Just lies? How about murder? No, that's somebody else. It just kind of struck me.
Here,
Helm.
Grumbar, god of the earth. Well, isn't earth part of growing and agriculture?
Well, I would think. So Helm, god of watchfulness. What is that? City watch? Pray to Helm? Helm, save us! We're on watch! I don't know where they came from that, to be honest. God of water, scribe of the dead, god of fire, god of dawn, god of joy, goddess of joy. To be honest, I'm really glad you didn't make your stuff like this, because this is just so.
Right.
I mean, look at god of divination, goddess of the moon, god of storms, goddess of good fortune, goddess of forests.
So let's talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my world, one of the NPC clerics that they have with them is the follower of Usi, who's water, ocean, sea, ships, sailors, weather, journey.
There you go. That makes more sense.
Right, now if you're a sailor,
Yeah.
you're taking a journey.
Yeah.
Okay?
You only have to pray to one goddess. You don't have to pray to 5 of them.
Right.
Only one.
And if you're, you got the sea, you've got,
Yeah.
the oceans, water, weather.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to rip on Forgotten Realms. I never played in there. So it's just one of those things where I'm kind of glad that you created this because it makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
When I look at it. The things are kind of grouped, the characteristics of the gods and goddesses are sort of grouped together. So you have, like you said, sailors would pray to this goddess who is the goddess of all these things. Water, weather, wind,
taking a journey,
commerce,
in fact,
traveling.
and it's not just sailors. So if you're gonna, with Ursa in the game, they're traveling on land.
Well, that's true.
And she has blessed them. When the times that they've left, she says, may Usei watch over you, and may your journeys be good and uneventful. And
yeah, it isn't just about traveling on the ocean; it's about traveling in general.
Right, because it's a journey, it's a travel.
Yep.
And then you've got the Forgotten Realm, or the Golarion.
Yeah, Golarion.
Deities. Golarion deities. Now a lot of people follow these when they play Pathfinder. This is they use generic. I wanted more depth in my world, so when I created my own deities, and it wasn't just for my world of Edain. My world of Morwicca has their own, and then there's the pirate world that I created my own game.
That's true.
Deities too.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's my belief. I didn't want to use any of these. Like Abaddor, Earth Law, Nobility, Protection, and Travel.
See, it sort of seems to me that Pathfinder, to delineate themselves from Forgotten Realms, decided they were going to create a little more complex characteristics of a god or a goddess, rather than, having 50 gods or goddess. They were going to shrink it down to about 10 or 15.
Let's see here. It's been so long since I've dealt with the gods of deity. Pharasma, death, healing, knowledge, repose, and water.
What? Why is water in there?
I don't know. Gorum, chaos, destruction, glory, strength.
I remember Gorum. Yeah.
they also have Asmodeus.
Mm-hmm.
Evil, fire, law, magic, trickery.
Wait. Can I see that?
Yeah.
Asmodeus?
Asmodeus.
Where's that at?
Right there.
Evil, fire. Why is fire evil? Evil, fire, law. Why is law evil? Magic, trickery. It seems like we got... Alright, so... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff scrambled. It's almost like they threw them all in a bag and just pulled them up by random.
Yeah.
There's definitely some room for improvement.
Yeah, and I know in my world there's two deities that wizards typically follow.
Yeah.
There's Vessen, whose knowledge of learning philosophy was an open book.
Yeah.
But there's also Trolsk. And Trolsk is the god of magic.
Yeah, magic.
But he's also considered chaotic because magic in my world
It can be. It's
chaos.
wild. It's a lot of it's wild magic.
It's chaotic.
Yeah.
You're drawing upon this power.
Yeah.
And there's a whole backstory in that with another campaign that we had. And it's like I said, a lot of these I actually created names based upon Google Translator, like Beliza. The funny thing is there's a young guy where I work whose last name is Beliza, and I said, oh, that's the Italian word for beauty, and he's like, yeah, I know. And
Bellissimo.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And so it was when I was looking Beliza, it's like, beauty, charm, love.
Yeah. Not to veer too far away from the topic of this, but let's look at it this way. If you're going to create your own deity system, and I would highly recommend
I would too.
that people do that, just to be creative, just to have fun, okay? Keep them consistent, all right? Don't make the goddess of beauty also the goddess of dirt. Dirt's beautiful because plants grow from it, okay? Sure, but sometimes it doesn't really make sense if you have something, like the example I just gave, Asmodeus, evil, fire, law, magic, and trickery. A lot of that stuff doesn't really fit together.
Right, law and magic is not... Magic is chaotic. In a lot of worlds, you even hear that.
Yeah.
Like the Witcher world, it's chaos.
Here's another one, Norgaber. Charm, death, evil, knowledge, trickery. Well, why is knowledge in there? Is knowledge evil?
Somebody might consider evil.
Charm? Someone's charming. Are they evil? I don't know. I just think that
it doesn't add up.
Yeah, let's try to keep things unscrambled here. Okay,
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot better for the people in your game if you try to keep things consistent on a level, so that they can keep the deities straight in their head. Okay, your god of thieves doesn't have to be evil, but there's going to be a little bit of trickery in there because thieves are tricksters and they steal things and stuff like that. That doesn't always mean that they're absolutely evil, but they're typically not very good.
Correct.
The god, your goddess of assassination and murder is probably going to be evil, just because nobody really likes to be murdered. Okay.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that that's the same god of death. The god of murder or the goddess of murder doesn't have to be the god of death, because death can happen in many ways. Through disease, accidents, old age, whatever. So try to keep things consistent if you're going to create your own deity system, just to make it a little more clear and easier to follow by the people who play your game.
Right, like Remus and mine was the slaughter, murder, and destruction.
Yes, slaughter, murder. Well, slaughter, not slaughtering animals, slaughter of warfare, slaughter, that kind of thing. The slaughter of the innocents, like innocent civilians being killed in war.
And then I've even got like infirmidia, disease, pestilence, and madness.
Well, that kind of works together.
Yeah.
Disease of pestilence. Madness, back then was considered a kind of a disease. Now, and it can be a disease even now, chemical imbalance. So, yeah, those characteristics are fitting together.
Yep.
How long did it take you to come up with like your list and setup? Because I remember you worked on it for a while.
It didn't take me that long, because when we started, when you came to me and said, I want to create my own deity, and I'm like, yeah. Right then was the point I said, okay, if Tom is going to create his deity, I'm going to create all these other ones. And I don't know, maybe over a week or time, and I've actually a few of them I've added a little bit more into.
Yeah. Over time.
Like Imbrolic, I decided, I saw this word Imbrolic, which is actually a pagan holiday, and I just thought, well, I kind of like that name, and I wanted this symbol of messengers, and that's where I love ravens and crows.
Yeah.
And in some cultures, they are the messenger.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how I came about that. But the appearance of Imbrolic is whether it's this shadowy creature that maybe when it disperses breaks out into, you see all these ravens just fly out,
Right.
and dissipate. So that's how I came upon that, and I have this imagery of them, and I actually have the images of all of my deities that I've come up with, and how they look and how they dress and their appearance and everything else, because and that stuff has been added over time.
Yeah. I mean, it really worked well in your world as we talk about the different deities. You constructed this. It allows for a creative outlet when you're creating your homebrew campaign. You don't have to follow the gods and goddesses of a canned campaign. You can create your own with all the characteristics and all the different sort of ways of worship and holy symbols. I would encourage someone to do that as a creative outlet. Just like Delaney and I encourage people to create an original campaign. You don't have to, but you should be encouraged to, because it's a creative outlet. People are naturally creative. They like to create things.
It's your own.
Yeah, it's your own. Make it your own.
Whether, and even if you use the canned worlds, we've said before, make it your own.
Yeah.
That's one of the best things as being a good DM, is making the world your own.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so cut and dry as these people have created.
Yeah.
Whether you're buying the Forgotten Realms or Pathfinder's Golarion or whatever world. So I think we're going to end this kind of secondy episode of Deities and Religion, and we want to make sure that you like, share, subscribe, spread the word, please. We really appreciate it. And if you make a comment, we'll make sure that we reply back. It may be a simple comment, but we try to reply back to everybody that makes a comment on our YouTube channel, because we really appreciate everyone who follows us. And anyway, thank you for watching Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
May all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling. Thanks,
Thanks,
folks.